So we planned to do that interview during the hurricane, but your team was so busy. What happened during that time?
Well, what happened during that time was, we've been responding to disasters for a little over 35 years, in the United States and also globally, right? So what we found is every country operates differently when it comes to emergency management. In the United States, they have a separate department that's assigned by the federal government to be, the emergency response for all states. Now, the state also has their own, what they call emergency services, everything from, firefighters, paramedics, urban search and rescue teams, and then there becomes a big federal scale. So the big wide area disasters, the federal government gets tapped really quickly once the state declares an emergency, the state governor. And what's happened particularly is the FEMA is not being run properly, right? So when you see from the federal government level, the results show clearly that when that hurricane was pushing into Florida, Florida's governor was already stationed, had task force, all their teams ahead in position, right? Because it was going to hit, for example, Tallahassee. Tallahassee's a big city, right? But it missed Tallahassee and it went over a smaller area of Perry, Florida, right? Which is more, rural areas that it went over top of. What happened in that scenario is it caused some damage along the flooding along the actual Florida coastline to the right of it. They had power on very quickly on because they already stationed the electrical line workers in position to respond immediately once the storm passed. But what happened is you see how Florida handles it differently. There's a hurricane approaching. Florida issued evacuation orders for all parts of that area that was going to be impacted. And people basically are asked to leave and move to another location, right? Outside that impact zone. Well, that didn't happen in North Carolina. The hurricane was still going up into North Carolina. And there was a massive amount of rain that system was carrying up into the mountains. And so in a situation like that, what would have been expected is for the state governor to issue what we call an emergency notification or reverse 911. So on your phone, you get an alert that says, hey, get out of the area. There's a potential for flooding in this area. You're at risk, so on and so forth. That never went out. So people were kind of left to think that there was nothing going to be that big of a problem, right? They also did not put swift water rescue teams in position to be able to respond to that type of scenario when that happened.
So why that happened? I mean, the government should have like the biggest response.
Yeah, the government should have that. But what happened is this thing is very, I mean, why didn't they do it? I don't see an excuse for it, right? Some people say, hey, there's a lithium mine, there's a quartz mine, there's these things that are in that geographical area. And when you see entire towns were completely wiped off the face of the planet, literally the foundations, homes, the entire area was completely, you just see dirt. I mean, there's nothing left there, right? And if you pay attention to what happened in Lahaina in Maui in Hawaii, they had a serious fire there as well. And in that fire situation, FEMA responded very late to that operation. And from the government standpoint, you have to understand that the next island over is Oahu. Oahu has one of the largest military bases in the United States, is right there outside of Honolulu, right? So Pearl Harbor. There's no reason that they couldn't push in that same day an aircraft carrier, right? Or multiple reinforcements to be able to support the people locally with temporary power, food, medicine, all that type of stuff. People did not see aid coming in for days. You understand? And the way that it scaled up was really a poor response. So I've shared this many times. I've been at this since 1989. So it's not a political thing for me, whether someone is pro one side or pro the other side. Before I was a registered Democrat, right? Then I became a registered independent, and now I'm a registered Republican. Why? Because it's not about being registered one party. I always voted for who I felt was the best person to operate a country, right? Privatno, as a private company, my job is to be able to respond to every disaster. So I pick people in my organization who are going to support me, that I can respond to my clients. And the same thing should be done with any government, is you're responding to the people who are employing you, which is the people for you to respond to whatever disasters are in their country.
So what is happening? Do they have enough staff in their teams, and are they clumsy, or what is happening? I mean, it will be more damage if your team didn't came to that incident place.
Of course. What happens sometimes, and you see this, it's really unfortunate, is people play politics, right? So they take over government, and then they start putting people in position who are not qualified, but they're their friends, they're their donors, they're their people that supported them in their campaign. So then they put certain people in position who should never be in those positions. And when something actually happens, the evidence is right there. It's on full display for the American people to see. It's no different than if you hired a private security guard, right? And this guy, he's big, he's strong, he looks like he knows what he's doing, he's scary and everything else, right? And as soon as somebody starts shooting at you, this guy's running the other direction because he's never been in that scenario. He may look the part, he may look the part on paper even, he's a great instructor, but he's never been in the heat of battle. He's never exchanged fire for fire, you understand? So he will panic in those type of situations. He won't know what calls to make, and he doesn't have people on his team who can respond effectively to that incident.
Does it mean that this is like, in a way, like corruption where it shouldn't be?
Well, absolutely. It's corruption where it shouldn't be, right? The last place that you want any type of corruption or people that are not qualified is in emergency management, right? Because you're going to see it. Like, listen, to me, I've worked on the border for the last 4 years supporting the border sheriffs because this administration basically didn't finish the wall that Trump almost completed. As a matter of fact, they distributed the material and did not use the same material that was there even to try to attempt to finish the wall, because their goal was not to enforce Trump's policies, right? Because they're like, well, we're for an open border. No, there's no such thing as open borders. You either have a border or you don't, right? Either you have security or you don't, And the people that are trying to make anything about borders to be like xenophobic, racist, those people are completely off their square, right? Because no one's saying don't come into the country. They're saying come into the country legally, not illegally, right? And if you want to come to the country that we have laws in, and the first thing that you did by coming into the country was break a law, well, the law says that you can't be in this country. You have to be deported, right? But if you want to come to the country and you're escaping persecution and you're coming with your family, then you show up like every other person. You show up at the port of entry, at the border, and you present your case with your family, and you allow the process to go through so they can properly vet who you are.